Okay. Welcome everybody to the fourth quarterly Southern Steelhead Coalition meeting. All right, I will share my screen just a second to talk about what our agenda is for today. All right. So again, welcome everybody and thank you for making it to today's meeting. We'll all be getting out at 12 o'clock, so you can have some nice lunch and have a good break. All right, so for today, we have a jam-packed agenda. So I'll first start with a quick hello and updates, and this will be on our upcoming field trip on the 21st. We will then have a speaker from the RCD Santa Monica Mountains, and that is Rosi Dagit, on the potential conservation strategies for the future of Southern Steelhead. She's been doing some really cool work and put out some really awesome papers recently. And then we'll have a question session. Because we will be having two speakers, I'm going to limit the question sessions to about 10 minutes. But at the end of the meeting, we will have an open discussion where the speakers have agreed to stay to the end, so you can ask any other questions that weren't able to be answered during this question period. Next, we have a speaker from CDFW, Tanielle Redman, on the effectiveness of restoration from CDFW. And then we'll have questions for her. Same thing, about 10 minutes. And then we will do our standing agenda item, which is sharing the updated progress of the prioritized projects that are partnered with the Southern Steelhead Coalition. And then if you want to put out any restoration projects that you might want to consider and need help funding for me to write a grant for you, that would be the time to do it right after the update. And then this is open discussion and announcements from coalition members. If you want to bring up anything to coalition, you have questions about something, if you want to just chat, or like I said, again, if you would like to ask our speakers any more questions outside of that 10 minutes. So it's going to be about an hour before we get to line item 6. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the field trip. In case you missed it, haven't gotten an email about it, well, we have a partner project field trip coming up on June 21st from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. The first place we're going to meet at is we're going to carpool and do car consolidation at Vaughn's and Santa Paula Center. Some of these locations have limited parking, so really requesting that you will come together and get into people's cars, do carpooling. We will be meeting at the tables and benches outside of the Vaughn's parking lot. And the reason we chose this area because there's a big parking lot, has lots of parking and a lot of activity, so you can leave your cars there all day without worrying something might happen to it. And if you'd like to sign up for the carpool so you know what spot you belong in right away, we don't have to take any time, you can go to this link, and I sent out these slides beforehand, and I'll send them out again after the meeting just in case you didn't get that. But this is the link to the Google Doc where you can sign up for a car to be in, or if you want to drive. All right, so let's talk about what we're doing. We'll do carpooling consolidation, leave at 10:20, and we'll get to the CESP Cienega Restoration and Public Access Project that is in collaboration with the Santa Clara River Conservancy and the University of California, Santa Barbara. And we'll look around, we'll have all these sites will have members there to talk about the project and what they're doing. So you can ask as many questions as you want. And then 11:50, we will get to the monitor wells at Hedrick Ranch. And that's from the Friends of Santa Clara River. I sent out an agenda, and on each of these sites, I have provided links to these places, so you can check out more from these organizations themselves. And then at 12:45, we will have lunch at the Santa Clara River Preserve. If there is no wind, we will have umbrellas out so you can sit under the shade. The people at the Nature Conservancy have very kindly offered that to us, and we really appreciate that. And then at 1 o'clock to 1:45, we will do a tour of the preserve, like a guided walk. We can also ask the Nature Conservancy questions about the restoration project and ongoing maintenance or whatever you want to know about. And then about 1:45, we'll drive back to the Vaughn's, and you guys get in your car and have a wonderful Friday. All right. So anybody have any questions before I move on? And again, I will send out this agenda again. I think I've sent out this event to everybody, but if you want to join last minute, we have plenty of space. All right. And if you want to attend, all we ask you to do is to fill out a survey. So the link is here. And also I sent out the link on our updated email for the survey, so we just know we can get a head count of who's supposed to be there. Again, carpooling, here's the link again. And then we also have a standing line item. I have a survey that you can fill out anonymously, and it's anything you want out of the coalition. If you want the coalition to talk about, spend a meeting to be like, hey, can you talk about this? I want to learn more about this. Fill that out. That way I can know what you would like this coalition to bring to you. I want you guys to get a lot out of these meetings and not just show up to show up. I want you to be able to get good information out of this. So you can leave it there, or you can send me an email. And there's a survey link there. And finally, our next meeting date will be September 12th. Same time, same bat channel on Zoom. And you can, I will send out an email link for that after this meeting. And then again, please feel free to send these meeting invites to all interested parties. All I ask is that you don't send them to any bad actors. That just disrupts the meeting. But anybody who would like to come in, concerned community member, anything like that, they're welcome in. All right. Thanks for that quick update. So next will be Rosi, and she'll be talking about the potential conservation of strategies for the future of southern steelhead. And then after that, we will have a question period. All right. So thank you so much. And Rosi, please go ahead and share your screen.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Once I share my screen, I can't see anything else. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat and we'll circle back to them at the end. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to share some information with you. The RCD has been working with a large group of people to think a little bit more proactively about short-term actions we can take to help our southern steelhead. And that's what I'll be sharing with you today. But first, I wanted to acknowledge that the southern steelhead distinct population segment is within tribal lands extending from the Santa Maria River down south to the Tijuana estuary. I've only included in the listing here today those within the Santa Monica Mountains that we're working specifically with. But one of the things that I think is really important about trying to engage with tribal members as we go forward, thinking about how do we recover southern steelhead that were important symbols and food sources for many, many tribes, is that I think it's an opportunity for us to really think about how we can share our different knowledge paradigms and use them together to figure out better ways to achieve resilience. So part of what we've been talking to is thanking everyone who's contributed to the information that I'm going to share with you this morning. I'm telling the story, but the story has many, many authors. And I want to most formally recognize the Stillwater Sciences team, Matt Drennan, Danielle Iaconelli, and Ethan Bell, who were instrumental in pulling together these documents. And funding for this was from former Assembly Member Richard Bloom. And we couldn't have done this without our technical advisory committee members, many of whom I see on the call today, other Steelhead friends, and also want to acknowledge CDFW because they have been administering this grant project with us. So we don't have to go over this laundry list. You guys all know what the many, many, many threats are to southern steelhead. And when you put all these together, what you really see is that these fish passage barriers, which are very specific, as well as all the bigger picture things, when you put them all together, it really has made it extremely challenging for probably one of the most resilient fish species I've ever worked with, the steelhead, to continue to thrive in this landscape. And what's really concerning is that in the National Marine Fisheries Service Recovery Plan, we have these new threats that have become more and more apparent as drivers in what's happening to our southern steelhead. And I think the most important one to consider is that ocean condition changes and our sea level rise impacts. These are things that are really difficult to incorporate into the mindset of how are we trying to recover these important fish. But we haven't really gotten quite as much of a handle on those aspects of things yet. And so some of you have already seen this. This is from a paper that we published in 2020. I haven't updated it to this year, but as you can see in the Southern California coastal DPS, there are not many fish that we've seen in terms of adult anadromous steelheads. Fortunately, the past 2 years, where we've had some greater rain, we've had a little bit more sightings, but they're still concentrated in just a few locations. And as a result of that, CDFW in April finally listed southern steelhead as an endangered species, matching the designation that National Marine Fisheries Service did in 1997. And so with this new listing and the new thinking about how can we take both short and long-term actions to recover steelhead, the Stillwater team and the RCD, thanks to the funding from Assemblymember Bloom, worked really hard for almost 2 years with a almost 80-member technical advisory committee to think about what these things could look like. And this document is available for anyone. It's on the RCD SMM website. If you go to reports and publications, and you'll see this. But the objectives of this report were really to think about, okay, what could we do tomorrow if we could do something that could help keep steelhead in the landscape? Because we know that following the almost decade-long drought and the incredible wildfires we have experienced since 2017, there are many areas where we used to have resident populations that could potentially contribute to the overall metapopulation, and they got really hammered. So with these objectives in mind, we tried to compile as much information as we could. And so these watershed specific plans are available upon request because they contain some pretty detailed information about distribution within a watershed. And so we didn't want to have that available to just anyone. But if you have a specific watershed that you want to know more about, we've pulled together all the habitat conditions, existing population data, what are the specific limiting and risk factors in that particular watershed. We got this updated by so many of our TAC members and CDFW teams. A shout out especially to Kyle Evans and his teams, because we tried to put all the information in one place and make these a living document that can be added to as things change over time. And then in the restoration plan that we put together, the rescue plan, we have an appendix that lists a framework on how to think about what actions to take where and when and why. And last but not least, CDFW has these great policy documents for translocation and giving direction on how to do that, when to do that. But each of those policies contains a list of questions that need to be asked and responded to before any translocation or other actions can be taken. So what we did is we pulled together the answers to those questions so that should there be an emergency, we have in any given watershed, we have this information pretty much ready to go and able to be incorporated into any kind of permit requests or whatever is needed to take action. So after a lot of work on this, the recommendations from the the report include formalizing the TAC, which is something that the Steelhead Coalition would play a very important role in. Thinking about how to set up a plan for programmatic rescues in a variety of key watersheds. I just work in the Santa Monica Bay, so Topanga is the only place left in the Santa Monica Bay that has a reproducing population of resident fish. Think about how do we do isolated rescues and experiment with reintroduction of wild fish that can't go back to the watershed that from which they were taken due to whatever emergency event occurred, but knowing that there are other watersheds that used to historically have steelhead, had a habitat disturbing event that extirpated that population, we should be thinking about maybe putting some fish back in there. But how do we do that? And what guidelines do we use? And how do we make sure that we're doing that in the best way to avoid unintended consequences? And one of the key issues that we came up with was figuring out how to create a temporary holding facility for these rescued wild fish so that we have a place to hold them in a healthy way that would support them being re-released at some point in time. And that's a little tricky. Experimental reintroduction using streamside incubators is something that we'd really like to encourage people to think about. And there's been some wonderful work being done, particularly by some tribes up north in the Shasta region. And they're getting great recovery of using streamside incubators that are utilizing tribal technology, not traditional scientific Western technology. Very interesting. And then, of course, you know, genetic cryopreservation and genetic research to keep us apprised of opportunities where we can support the diversity of this species and maintaining that genetic diversity over time. So the good news is that we are going to be working with CDFW to come up with some holding capacity for rescued fish. State Parks has funded the continuous monitoring and snorkel surveys and red surveys for Malibu and Topanga Creeks through 2026. So that's very encouraging. Invasive species removal efforts, particularly the red swamp crayfish, which has been devastating to our southern populations during the drought. State parks and a coalition of partners, Pepperdine University, USGS, National Park Service, and Debbie Sharpton and her team on the UC team are all working on putting together a comprehensive removal plan for crayfish in the Santa Monica Mountains. So we're hoping that we can get that going, although we're getting a bit of a reprieve because the rains in the past 2 years have pretty much knocked the populations down significantly, which is great news. We just don't want them to rebound again. And then the most important holy grail of all of our efforts is to try to restore the habitat and connectivity and water flows necessary to support steelhead like these young of the year and keep them alive and growing and thriving. So I just want to end with some happy notes. Caltrans fish passage efforts have been pretty significant in the Santa Monica Bay. The Trancas Lagoon Bridge is being replaced as we speak, and Caltrans is adding about 100 feet to this existing span so that there's opportunity for lagoon restoration on the north side of the bridge in the future, and that it also supports good flow and good habitat conditions throughout the lagoon to the south. Solstice Creek, the National Park Service and the city of Malibu years ago finished removing all the upstream barriers in Solstice Creek. And the last remaining barrier is this culvert on Pacific Coast Highway. And this is in progress right now too. So this is being replaced by a full span bridge. And last but not least, Big Sycamore, as you see here on the lower right. This bridge was built in the 1930s. It's currently very threatened by sea level rise and coastal erosion. And so Caltrans is working with state parks to come up with a solution for this area. And I think Caltrout and state parks get kudos for all of their work that's currently happening to remove Ringe Dam. They're going through the FEIR for this was certified, and now they're refining the plans. And, you know, we should by 2026 have an idea of how we're going to actually make this happen. But, you know, we know that these projects take forever to accomplish. So we can't lose sight of these other short-term actions that are available to us. And another kind of long-term project is Topanga Lagoon. And this, the final environmental impact report for this project will be released and shared with the public in mid-July. We're hoping for full certification of this by the fall. And then we'll start working with our Caltrans partners, our state park partners, and the Los Angeles County Department of Beaches and Harbors to fine tune how to actually implement the preferred alternative that's been identified. And with that, I'm just going to let you think about these visions of future habitat. The existing model of Topanga Lagoon is on the top, and two of the three alternatives that were considered in the environmental impact reports are illustrated on the bottom. And what's cool is that the historic configuration of the lagoon is, and the topography of that seasonal system is reflected in both of these on the west side of the wetted area. On the east side, things would vary slightly depending on which alternative is selected. And so with that, I'll just sign off and say thank you very much for the opportunity to sort of get you guys thinking about where these short-term actions might be applicable in the areas that you work, and hopefully provide the link to that document so you can move forward on those as you see fit. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for such a great talk, Rosie. The work you guys are doing is so inspiring to see. It did take a long time, but you guys are doing a lot of work. So I'd like to open up the floor to questions. If anybody has a question about Rosie's work or how she, what her next steps are, anything. Okay, well, I'll start off. So Rosie, you said that the last project you were talking about, you have an EIR for the Topanga. What do you think is the main problem that you see with the Topanga Creek area that you guys want to remediate?
Well, the biggest problem is the current bridge is only 79 feet wide, and so it functions like a fire hose. And when we get these big storm events, we get just like a huge chute of water coming out around that, through that bridge. And so by all three of the project design alternatives under consideration, expand that bridge from 79 feet to a center span of 200 feet, and then adds, you know, 120 to 140 feet on either side. And so what that does is it really takes the pressure off, literally and figuratively, and it allows those flood flows to go down. It provides a lot of opportunity and what we're calling freedom space for the creek to realign and adjust as it sees fit. And so while we're doing excavation down to provide that area, because right now the lagoon is surrounded on all four sides by 30 feet of fill that was put in 1933 when they built the small bridge that's there now. We take out all that fill and we give them the area space to adjust and move, then that gives a lot more opportunity for fish passage, because instead of, you know, having just a couple of hours when the flows are just right and the lagoon is connected and they can get in or out of the system, now we'll have a much wider window of time when that opportunity is available. So that's one big thing that we're trying to fix. And the second big thing that we're trying to fix is that right now there is really no lagoon habitat per se. I mean, there's no wetland plants. We've got like one little patch of disticulus and one little patch of tules. But there's really not much that isn't arundo. And so getting the arundo out, giving, you know, creating more space is going to be, I think, a big help for. And we also have tidewater gobies, which are federally listed in our lagoon. So because those two species are present, the work that will happen doesn't change and doesn't touch the existing wetted area. So we're leaving what's working and then just expanding away from it so that we don't mess up what we've already got. And then as the storm events come and go, things will change naturally as the hydrology adjusts.
Sounds like a very good time. Okay, so I think Catherine has a question. Go ahead, Catherine.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for your presentation. It was very informative. So my question was, talking about this restoration project, do you have any information on the additional benefits of this project to say like flooding risk to human communities or just better watershed management in general? Do you have any information about that?
Yeah, so actually the Topanga Lagoon restoration is really a multi-benefit project on a lot of levels. So I just talked about the fish because you're the fish people, but there are historic, cultural, tribal, important cultural and current uses of the area that we have integrated into this project. So it'll help provide better public access to this recreational benefit. It'll coordinate better with emergency services, and there's benefits for that. The flood reduction is very important and will happen, and potentially some real water quality benefits out of this as well. So feel free to Google Topanga Lagoon Restoration. You'll get to our website and you can find out all the details on all those other important parts of the whole thing.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Lynn, if you would like to go ahead and ask your question.
Lynn, you're muted, so I can't. There you go.
I just said, hi, Rosie. I guess you progressed past Oaks considerably.
So, well, I'm actually a marine biologist by formal training.
Oh, okay. Well, I know you from your
I got to Oaks because fish need trees.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, I didn't know that. That's a fun history. So I just want to say to everybody that you note that the bridge is too short. It doesn't expand. Every single time they put a bridge in Santa Clarita, we've had this problem over and over again. The developers want to save money, so they make the bridges too short. And we've always complained about it, but I want to urge everyone on this call, if you are working on some project and they try to make the bridge too short, try to get them to make it longer, because this is what happens. It backs the floodwaters up behind, and then eventually somebody's going to want to take it out at considerable expense and put it in again. And then I was going to thank you for recognizing about the tidewater gobies, because I think the big thing with the, I don't know if it was Malibu or Bayona, one of them, there was a big deal with trying to restore it and not taking into consideration the tidewater gobies. So, and I'm not a marine biologist, so I'm just hearing this. So
Well,
when you can,
in Malibu, I was the biologist of record for the gobies during the restoration of Malibu Lagoon, and it actually was pretty successful. We got a lot of habitat that's suitable for goby reproduction, and actually this past spring, I had a group of high school environmental AP biology students come out and help us do some seining to just check on the gobies, because we translocated some from Topanga to Malibu, and we got a lot of gobies. So things are the Malibu Lagoon restoration, I think, was pretty successful on many levels, despite misinformation to the contrary.
well, it doesn't sound like you were doing what they did there anyway, where you're opening it up completely.
Well, no, they didn't open it up completely either. But what we're doing in Topanga is a very different set of circumstances, right? Because in Malibu, you have an antecedent creek that connects into the San Fernando Valley. And as a result is 109 square miles and has all kinds of inputs coming into that watershed system. Topanga, by contrast, is one of our coastal watersheds. It does not go through to the valley. It's 18 square miles, considerably smaller. 2/3 of the watershed is in public ownership, and the majority of our hydrologic processes are exactly the way they've always been. So we don't have the challenges that Malibu had, that Santa Clarita has, and Santa Clara rather, and Ventura, where there's a lot of straws pulling water out of the system. There's a lot of, impervious surfaces that send stormwater runoff into the system in ways that are not beneficial. So Topanga's blessed with the fact that we don't have very many straws. In fact, they're very few and not even measurable. And our impervious surfaces, while they're just about at a little over 8% of the watershed, are distributed in such a way that we're not getting, the creek is not receiving a level of pollutant load that exceeds the natural ability of the creek to manage it. So we've been really lucky with that. And that's why Topanga is considered to be a reference stream for benthic macroinvertebrates and other things, because we still have all the species that were supposed to be there, except for red-legged frogs. And we don't have all the invasive species that are present in many other places. We only have the red swamp crayfish. So we don't have like largemouth bass or catfish or any of those other sunfishes that cause so much damage. So we're really lucky that Topanga is this little gem that we can support the recovery of. And hopefully all those little baby fishes that are coming out of Topanga and growing up and going out into the ocean can find their way to help repopulate all the other areas that we care about.
Thank you.
So that was my next question for you, Rosie. Was what, like, you don't need to say the official, but what's the count you've seen on baby Omicus right now?
Oh, well, actually, it's so exciting because we did a survey in May and we had 612 baby fish. Under
612?
Yeah,
Wow.
under 2 inches. And we had about 90 juvenile and adults going all the way from up to like 16 inches. So yeah, it's wonderful.
That's great.
Pretty magical. However, we did not have any anadromous adults that we could document this year.
And most likely that's because of the water hose effect from the bridge, which will hopefully mitigate some of that, especially since the rains this year. I'm in the San Fernando Valley, and that's a lot of rains. And I know Topanga's different, but like, I know they were getting.
We had over 50 inches and this year. So that was a pretty good year.
Well, does anybody else have any final questions? We have about a minute left for questions with Rosie. And if it's not, it might come up later for the actual discussion at the end.
Sure. Well, thanks, guys.
Thank you, Rosie. All right.
Elizabeth, you're muted.
Great. Thank you so much. It happens to everybody, I guess, right? All right. So thank you again, Rosie, for that talk. And next we have Tanielle Redman talking about the effectiveness of restoration. And then we'll have another question session. If you want to share your screen.
Okay, let's see if I can figure this out. Maybe.
Should be at the bottom of your screen. Yeah, there we go.
Okay, think that's working.
Looks great.
Perfect. Alrighty, so my name is Tanielle Redman. I'm a fisheries biologist with Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission, and I'm going to talk about the project that I work on, which is the monitoring and evaluation of salmonid habitat restoration project, or MEASURE for short. So this talk's just going to provide a little bit of overview about the MEASURE project and what we do and how we do it. We'll go over some of our common monitoring terms, the overarching monitoring questions that we look at during this effectiveness monitoring, some of the data we're currently collecting, some of the data we report on, and if we have time, some of our monitoring results from some of our Southern California restoration projects. So the MEASURE project exists to conduct monitoring on FRGP-funded restoration projects. And the goal is to provide FRGP with an overall evaluation of how successful the projects that they fund are. For those who don't know, FRGP is the Fisheries Restoration Grant Program, and it funds grants throughout coastal California, which focus on restoring, enhancing, or protecting salmonid habitat in anadromous watersheds. So what MEASURE does is looks at project structural integrity and fish populations and stream morphology responses to this restoration work. Now, the MEASURE project is a statewide project all throughout coastal California. We have a team that does the monitoring along the North Coast that's based out of Fortuna. And then we have a team that does the monitoring on the South Coast. That's me, based out of Santa Barbara. South Coast monitoring hasn't been super consistent throughout the years. There was a gap for a while, and so I've just since joining the project kind of gotten the Southern California monitoring back up and running over the past 3 years. So kind of the monitoring that we do or that is done for this project. First, there's implementation monitoring. So implementation projects are restoration projects that go into construction. So 100% of those projects are monitored for implementation. That's usually done by CDFW grant managers. The rest of the stuff on this chart is done by the MEASURE team. So we do effectiveness monitoring on a subset of those implementation projects. A minimum of 10%, although because of the way our selections are stratified by region and project type, we usually end up doing a lot more than 10%. In Southern California, since there's not a ton of projects that get funded by FRGP every year, I've ended up doing 100% of projects or doing effectiveness monitoring for them. And then a subset of the projects that receive effectiveness monitoring also receive validation monitoring. This is done for projects that focus on in-stream habitat or fish passage. And then a further subset of those projects receive BACI monitoring, and those are only ones that meet certain criteria that also do in-stream habitat improvement. I won't go too deep into BACI because we haven't done any BACI monitoring in Southern California, but I think it would be great if we ever get a project funded that that meets all the requirements for BACI to get to do that in Southern California and compare that to how the results of this monitoring being conducted in Northern California. So now I'm going to go a little bit more in depth of all these different terms. So implementation monitoring kind of focuses on whether these projects do what they propose to do and are in compliance with all CDFW standards. This is done immediately following project construction by the CDFW grant managers, and they use checklists to do this monitoring. And we have effectiveness monitoring. This monitoring is done to document trends in the conditions at these sites following restoration projects. This consists of both pre-treatment and post-treatment monitoring. Pre-treatment is done just before a project starts construction. Post-treatment is done 3 years after a project is completed so that it gets time to see some winter storms and settle out and everything. This is also done using checklists and photographs. We have our validation monitoring. This is monitoring done to document the response of biota, in this case salmonids, to restoration actions. And we do a variety of different surveys as part of our validation monitoring, which are mostly juvenile snorkel surveys, adult spawning ground or red surveys, and then juvenile minnow trapping if we can't get out and snorkel. And then there's BACI, which means before and after control impact monitoring. This examines how the creek channels have changed before and after implementation of a project using control reaches and impact reaches as a 10-year study. So now some of the monitoring questions we focus on as part of our monitoring. Implementation and effectiveness monitoring looks at if these habitat projects are being carried out as proposed, and if they're properly implemented, are these projects having the intended beneficial effects? Implementation monitoring also looks at if they were implemented properly, and what are the conditions immediately after project construction is done. Effectiveness monitoring looks at, well, these questions focus more on pre-treatment. So what are the specific objectives of each feature proposed for the project, and what are the conditions at each treatment site prior to project implementation? And then during post-treatment, we focus on what are the conditions at each treatment site after enough time has passed to evaluate effectiveness, and were the project and its features effective in achieving its objectives. So validation monitoring looks to detect responses of salmon and steelhead to watershed restoration actions. We want to figure out if the restoration improved salmonid populations. And then BACI monitoring, we want to determine if projects that place artificial in-stream structures into streams are effective in improving stream morphology and increasing local fish abundance in the treated area at the stream reach level. So what's some of the actual data we go out and collect in order to address these monitoring questions? So kind of to begin with, when we go out to do our monitoring, we first look at a project and determine what the different features of each project is. So feature is a distinct treatment that's implemented to interact with the environment and improve anadromous salmonid habitat. So a project can have a variety of different features. So we figure out what all the project features are. We then select which checklists will be used to monitor them. And the checklists are all geared towards different types. So some could be for fish passage, some could be for channel reconstruction or in-stream habitat modification. So we figure out what all the project features are and monitor each using checklists and photographs. So we have our photographic monitoring. We take before and after pictures of all of the project features, showing a lot of times we'll have different views of the project and its features. Then with the effectiveness monitoring, we'll collect a lot of quantitative data. So this is pre and post treatment data that we can compare. And this all depends on what the objectives of the project are and what treatments are being used in the project. So we'll look at things like maximum residual water depth, percent of habitat units covered by shelter, large woody debris counts, active channel widths, percent slope through crossings, bank ankles, etc. And then we also do look at some qualitative monitoring of the projects. So during pre-treatment, we would go out and determine what the project objectives are. We'll record pre-treatment conditions and determine what their targeted improvements are. And during post-treatment, we would go out and record post-treatment conditions and determine if those targets were met. So, for example, we'll look at if it's an objective of the project, did the feature create targeted habitat? Did it reduce bank erosion? Did it stabilize or correct channel problems? So we'll look at all these different things depending on the treatment type, the feature, and compare between pre and post treatment. And then also after post treatment, each feature gets a rating from excellent to fail, depending on how it meets all of these various criteria. And then each project as a whole receives an overall project rating, and that's using this formula based on a combination of all the individual feature ratings. Validation monitoring, some of the data we collect in that. These are kind of our two main types of monitoring. We do juvenile snorkel surveys, where we will count fish by species and age class. We will collect data on habitat, unit measure dimensions, and on in-stream cover. We can use this data to determine what fish densities are, what species are present, whether cover increases from pre to post treatment. And then we do adult spawner surveys, where over our survey reach, we will collect data on the number of reds and live fish and carcasses we encounter. And we can kind of determine where that location is relative where the restoration work happened. So for example, we're hoping to see fish upstream of former barriers. I won't go too into depth on Baki, but we collect a lot of data during the Baki monitoring on both our impact and our control reaches. And then some of the data or some of the annual reporting we do with this data, we every year will write reports for regional general permits. And this will include all of the implementation data that is collected by the grant managers, as well as all the pre and post-treatment effectiveness monitoring data that's collected by us at Measure. We will also compile annual validation monitoring reports, so all of the validation and Baki data collected throughout the year. And then every year for all of the projects that we complete post-treatment monitoring on, we will compile these little case study reports for each individual project. So that's what I'm going to go into a little bit more depth on, is our case study reports. These are short reports, 2 to 3 pages, that cover kind of a project overview, what its objectives are, a little bit of details on the construction of the project, some of our main takeaways or observations from our effectiveness monitoring, as well as some of our validation monitoring results. These reports are published on the Cowfish website, so you guys can take a look and read through these reports if you would like. So for the remainder of my talk, I'm going to look into I've selected a few of our completed Southern California effectiveness monitoring projects taken some pictures and data out of that to show. So first off, we've got the Arroyo Sequite Steelhead Trout Barrier Removal Project. This project is a fish passage project. They removed 2 low flow Arizona stream crossings, which were functioning as total barriers to Steelhead passage. Those were removed and replaced with free spanning bridges. They also reconstructed the channel throughout the crossing area, as well as did some revegetation of the banks and a little bit of invasive plant removal. So as we can see in these pictures, we've got pre-treatment conditions and post-treatment conditions. This is for the lower crossing. We also have a picture here. This is the upper crossing, and this just shows kind of flow conditions during the winter. This is a photo taken during a RED survey last year. So we can see just from pictures and also like from our monitoring checklists that this project fulfilled its objective of removing fish passage barriers and providing fish passage. Also, as part of this project, we have been doing some validation monitoring. So this is not all just Mesher data. This is kind of a joint effort between Mesher and CDFW's coastal monitoring program. The CMP has been collecting data in a lot of these watersheds that I have restoration projects in for many years. So I've kind of teamed up with them to collect this data together in recent years. But as you can see from the data, since CDFW took over monitoring in Arroyo Sequite, we haven't seen any fish yet. That's not to say that there haven't been any fish in Arroyo Sequite. I believe that the RCD of the Santa Monica Mountains did see steelhead above the former barriers back in 2017. So it looks like they were successful in providing fish passage. We just haven't seen a reproductive population reestablish itself in this watershed yet. So our monitoring continues. The next project I want to talk about is the Circle G Ranch Fish Passage Restoration Project. This is in Carpinteria Creek. I guess I didn't specify for the previous one. Arroyo Sequite is in the Santa Monica Mountains. Carpinteria Creek is one of the watersheds within the Conception Coast. So for this project, if I can get my laser pointer going. So for this project, here's pre-treatment conditions. And you can see there is an undersized bridge. There's this big, long section of channel that consists of stepped concrete and then very steep rock and concrete banks. So for this project, they took all of that out, replaced the bridge with a much larger free-spanning bridge, laid back the banks, and reconstructed the channel with native materials. So the goal for this was to provide fish passage. This original channel and undersized bridge was a total barrier. When I went out and did post-treatment monitoring, you can see conditions were dry, it was a little overgrown, so hard to see kind of how well the habitat looks in this picture. And this picture is a little zoomed in. It doesn't quite show the entire extent of the project reach. These pictures do. So here we have post-treatment. This is from the same standing as a couple months later during a RED survey. So I don't know if you can see it, but the bridge is back there. And these rocks right here in the center are actually the same rock weir that is exposed here. So the pool below had filled in, and it was kind of hard to tell what was going on in the channel back when I conducted post-treatment monitoring. But since these storms that we've had, the project has kind of, or the project area has been flushed through with a bunch of water, and all of the features that were implemented in this project are now visible again. So this rock weir, which has formed this nice pool below, is visible. This right here is a wood structure that they installed, and that's still there. The bridge is there, providing perfect fish passage all the way through the channel here. I kind of love this project and seeing it's been through so much, this project site, since it was constructed in 2016. We've had drought, we've had Thomas fire, we've had debris flows, we've had drought again, and then we've had 2 back-to-back years of huge storms, and everything's still there and functioning as it should. Again, we've done validation monitoring, and I've got some snorkel data collected by CDFW going all the way back to 2014, where we had some juveniles or resident fish seen during the summer surveys, but nothing has been seen in this watershed since 2017. So again, we're still continuing our monitoring to look for a fish response. And then real quickly, I'll just show a few pictures from Kyoto Creek. Kyoto Creek is a tributary to the Santa Ynez River. It had a whole bunch of barriers. I think there were a total of 11 crossings. 10 of them were low flow stream crossings and one was an undersized bridge. And they have since removed 10 of them and replaced them with these bottomless arch culverts. There's still one barrier that remains, and that's down at the very bottom of the stream near the confluence. So, but just a few pictures of these. This was crossing 3. Here's crossing 4 before and after, and here's crossing 8 before and after. I don't have any validation monitoring results to go over for these projects, and that's just because another organization does most of the monitoring for this area, Kachuma Operation and Maintenance Board, but they have shared some of their data with me. Last I had heard, they have not seen an anadromous steelhead yet in Kyoto Creek since they've started all these projects, but that's not surprising since there still remains a barrier at the bottom of the creek. But they do in their snorkel and red survey see resident fish or juvenile fish swimming around throughout the creek, which the goal of these projects was to provide fish passage to all life stages of steelhead trout. So now seeing that these resident fish can then move throughout the creek freely without any barriers to impede their passage is great. That's what we want to see. All right, any questions?
Thank you so much. I actually have a question for you, Tanielle.
Yeah,
so
do you want me to
Yeah, you can stop
end this?
Yeah, if you want to stop sharing, you can.
I'm still sharing.
Awesome. So I was wondering, if you're gardeners, sorry about that, there's a lawnmower being used. What do you guys do with the rating system that you make for these places that you survey? Does that go into funding, or does that go, how does that information and those reports, how are those used in the organization?
Yeah, so it all gets submitted in reports in all of our annual reporting or end of grant reporting. It gets submitted to FRGP to use that information how they will. I'm not exactly sure how they use that information. Hopefully it's to then determine whether these projects were successful and if these are good, the types of projects to continue funding or maybe make modifications to if they're not successful, that sort of thing.
Tanielle, I can jump in really quick as well from perspective at FRGP. That is correct. Basically, we do look at this data and information on the effectiveness of these types of projects, and that feeds directly into our prioritization. So within FRGP, you might see there are priority 1, 2, or 3 projects for funding based on project types, and this information does feed directly into that. And it's also been very critical in some of the changes we're making to FRGP for 2025. Some attempts to kind of streamline some of the applications and the whole process itself. So this information is definitely being used and being looked at. It's not something that's disappearing.
Thanks, Kyle.
Sarah, if you want to ask your question, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, thank you for the presentation. It's super exciting to see all this work being done by CDFW. I was wondering how this Pacific States monitoring and ongoing CDFW monitoring relates to like project-specific monitoring that's required by permits.
We're kind of our own thing. So I think the effectiveness monitoring that CDFW does through this measure project doesn't necessarily fit into any permitting required monitoring.
Just on top of or in addition to?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, Garrett, go ahead and
Yeah, just to add to that last comment, it seems like there'd be a lot of opportunity to sort of kill a couple birds with one stone if you're going out and monitoring, and you could tie in the 404 monitoring, for instance, to some of these plans, or bring in the people responsible for that and share that information. Might make it more effective, but otherwise great program and nice. Thanks for sharing those photos. First question I had was regarding Kyoto Creek and the lower barrier that still remains. Are there plans to address that barrier? Do you know?
I'm not fully in the loop there, but I know it's being discussed. I'm sure Kyle
Okay.
knows a lot more about that than I do.
Yes, we are. The lower barrier was part of a enforcement action that was taken through CDFW in conjunction with the District Attorney of Santa Barbara County. And as part of that settlement, the plans are for it to be removed. Currently, that is scheduled for fall of this year. We're trying to continue to work with the landowner to make sure that that stays on track.
Nice. Thanks, Kyle. And the second question relates kind of to Rosie's talk that before yours, but she mentioned like creating facilities for holding wild fish for potentially transplanting to other streams. And I just wanted to share, I'm based in New Mexico, and one of our most effective relocation programs we have for wild Rio Grande cutthroat is wild to wild native transplants without staging them anywhere. But they'll actually identify populations or where there are an abundance or a potential source, and streams that have been either impacted by natural disturbances, fires, debris flows, as you mentioned, or drought, or other mechanisms, barrier removals that have since been implemented. Having those streams like Leo Carrillo, where you don't have any observations occurring yet, and understanding that you have these source points might be a more efficient or effective mechanism instead of trying to build a facility and stage them, which also has its advantages. I'm not saying we shouldn't be doing that, but if there's opportunities where there are an abundance of fish being noted in a particular watershed, and these other areas can be identified or flagged for fish reintroduction, I just wanted to share that's the primary relocation is wild to wild. For wild to wild fish and with non-anadromous fish here in New Mexico. But otherwise, thank you.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Garrett. And I think we went all of the above. So, it's nice to be able to do wild to wild when that's feasible, but sometimes you have to hold fish for a bit too. So having that flexibility and ability to respond rapidly, that's what we're really trying to go for. So yeah, all of the above, but thanks for that.
yeah, very cool. Does anybody have any other questions for Tanielle? All right, we can get back to the discussion. Only reason I'm rushing is that we have a little bit of time left, and I have to get through this last standing item. It's just something we have to do for the grant for this. So Tanielle, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. And I have more questions for you, but like I said, I gotta move on. Okay.
Elizabeth, you're muted.
Of course I am. I don't know what's going on today, but we got to move on to the next part. Tanielle, thank you so much for speaking and giving his talk. So we're gonna leave the rest of the question time for the discussion. We have to go through this last line item that is part of the coalition. All right. So next is prioritize restoration projects. If you can, please give us an update. The first one we start off with is Caltrout. And when you talk about your project, you can also ask if you have any support that you need for your project, please let us know. Russell, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. How's it going? Not too much has changed on the two projects that are prioritizing the strategic plan for Caltrout, the Harvey Diversion Fish Passage Remediation Project. We're still waiting on a sizable funding application we submitted to the Water Smart Program Bureau Reclamation. Conversations with them, hopefully mid-June, that they should be making those decisions. That will essentially, hopefully, kick off re-engagement on that. It won't secure all the funding necessary to get final designs and implementation, probably about a quarter of it at 20 million. But once that does happen, being optimistic, we are going to try and coordinate and schedule a Harvey Diversion Summit, essentially, and bring to the table all the relative stakeholders to see if we can't figure out a path forward to really getting that project finalized and on the ground. So, look for an email from me that calls for your participation in that. Means that we hopefully secured 20 million of the 60 million necessary to continue that project. Rose Valley, we're moving towards Rose Valley Creek Restoration Project with Los Padres National Forest, moving towards final plan set, hopefully by the end of the summer here. That'll be admin final plan set, waiting on signatures, the engineer stamp, once we have bid documents and everything put together, working on building the funding for that to move into implementation. It's looking like likely spring of 2026 would be the soonest that we could get that into implementation. But unfortunately, we've hit a bit of a not roadblock, but stumbling point on that as well. Los Padres is now questioning or raising red flags about the lack of any not that there wasn't, but consideration for recreation planning, which we're appreciative and receptive to, but ultimately this was at the direction of the forest. We tried to put the restoration plan on the ground, so that way once the valley resettles itself, we could then go and do a full modernization, updating of the recreation plan. So having some conversations with the Forest Service there to not lose all the good work that we've done over the past 5 years to get to final plan sets on that project. I mean, we have all of the permitting almost in place. We're going through SERP right now, so that's exciting to use that pathway. We have submitted the wildlife BA to U.S. Fish and Wildlife. That is currently on pause. As well, we discussed the rec plan, but we do have our fisheries BA signed. So we're getting a lot of the major permits in place to implement this project, and so just need to kind of work through some of these issues on the back end, but still driving towards implementation, because that's really an important project for the coalition. I don't think there's anything else I can really give an update on that Caltrout's leading. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Russell. Okay, so I figured out what was going on. Keep touching the space bar, even though I turned it off. It's supposed to mute me, but technology, right? Okay, so next is City of Ventura and others that are working on the Santa Clara Estuary. Do we have anybody here who can talk about that or give updates?
This is Sarah Mulder from the City of Ventura. Our reduction in treatment plant discharge to the Santa Clara River Estuary is still moving forward. The city's almost done with construction of the ocean outfall that's associated with our advanced water purification facility upgrade. And there will be treatment plant upgrades and advanced water purification facility built on a time frame for I think about 2027, but our reduction in discharge to the estuary should start in 2025 as long as we get through some additional permitting with the state board and the regional board.
Thank you. All right, next is the Wishatoyo, which I will talk about since Tevin can't be here, or I know we do have some Wishatoyo members if they want to talk about anything, but I was going to give a quick update on a couple of the projects that Tevin sent in. So
Take it away, Elizabeth.
okay, thank you. Okay, so right now we have update with United Water Conservation District. The Wishitoyo continues to work with National Marine Fisheries Service and CDFW in compliance monitoring efforts to ensure safe and effective fish passage at the Vern Freeman diversion. And then for the watershed monitoring program, this spring, the Wishitoyo partnered with UCLA for the ecology practicum course, the EEB 183, for an updated assessment of the aquatic invasive species in Santa Clara River watershed. This includes compiling data from INAT, the USGS National NAS database, existing literature, and surveys at the point of interest throughout the watershed. The students in Wishitoyo are finalizing their report, which is going to be pretty cool, and education materials and mapping for the project, and look forward to distributing to interested organizations. I would love to get some of that. That'd be great to have for tabling for the coalition. And then the watershed monitoring program is looking forward to conducting OMICA surveys throughout the Sespe Creek and Santa Paula Creek drainages this summer and fall. Hopefully, if that allows, if they can get there. I believe they're having access issues for a lot of organizations. All right, so I just sped through that, so give some time for you guys to discuss. The next organization, is there anybody here from Friends of Santa Clara River that'd like to talk about Cesar Creek passage remediation project? Okay, well, hopefully we can get an update.
I'm on that board, but
Okay.
it's really Candace that's doing that, and she has just applied for someone to help her with it because she took a job with a conservancy in Santa Barbara, which you probably know about, and she's feeling overwhelmed. So it's moving forward, but it's going to get more management.
Okay, still a good update. Thank you
Yeah,
very
I
much.
have a tiny update about that as well.
Okay.
The addition, I'm Olivia Johnson, I'm the grant manager for CDFW for
Oh.
CSAR. And yeah, the additional staff member did get approved. So
Oh,
once
good.
we get that contract in place, I think things will start moving a lot faster. Yeah, I know Candace has a lot on her plate, and yeah, but we're looking forward to moving forward.
Great. Glad to hear that. Okay. So then next we have the Santa Clara River Conservancy, the Sespe Cienega Restoration Project. So these are the Friends of Santa Clara River are going to be doing a tour for this upcoming field trip along with the Santa Clara River Conservancy. Is anybody here from the Santa Clara River Conservancy that wants to talk about this or give us an update? That's okay. We'll get an update when we go visit.
Yeah,
We'll get
are they gonna send out more information, because I did sign up for that, but I haven't seen any like meeting points or anything.
I did send out, and maybe you didn't get on that, but I will send it out, Lynn. I'll send you out the agenda and the meeting points. We have a whole schedule that I've made for you. So
Yeah, because 3 of us signed up and we're going to carpool down. I'm going to try
Okay.
to get another student too.
Cool. I will send that to you again. I think maybe you just somehow didn't get on that list, but I will do that for you. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
All right. So let's move on, and we're almost done. We'll have free discussion time. Anybody from the UC Santa Barbara wants to talk about watershed wide arundo management or groundwater dependent ecosystem hydrology study? Okay. And then finally, the Nature Conservancy. I know you guys have been repairing stuff. If you want to give us an update on the Santa Clara River Nature Preserve and how that's going. And that's another site we're gonna be visiting.
Sure. Yeah, the Nature Conservancy, we have 4 projects on the Santa Clara River restoration projects that are in the maintenance phase. And those span from Fillmore to our Santa Clara River Preserve in Santa Paula. And then we're starting a new body of work in the fall at the location at the 12th Street Bridge, what we call our Prairie Pacific property, where we're starting new arundo removal restoration project. And then we have 2 projects that are being planned for wetland habitat creation. So these 2 historic rain years have exposed a number of new artesian features on the river. And so we're taking a farm out of production and plan to restore habitat, wetland habitat off the main channel. And then similarly, the Santa Clara River Preserve create additional wetland habitat, stormwater retention. And then, of course, yeah, we're continuing maintenance at the Santa Clara River Preserve and excited to have that open. And so far, everything's been really smooth. I hope we'll look forward to having everyone visit next week.
Thanks so much, Peter. We really do. I look forward to seeing it. I've been hearing so much good things about it. All right, so next I'm going to blow through this. If you have a call for restoration projects and you need funding or help, please reach out to me. If there's any grants you'd like for us to look at, or if you need any assistance. I'm also asking for organizational handouts. So I know a couple of you guys will be making some cool educational materials, or you want to talk about what your project's doing, send them to us and I will table with those. And then finally, update us if there's any events you'd like us to attend. If there's meetings or updates, please send them to me. And I'd like to open up the floor for discussion and remind everybody that our next coalition meeting is September 12th, same time. And if you'd like to contact me, please go ahead. But I know that Rosi had an announcement that if she wants to take the floor with, start off the floor with.
So just a quick link that I put in the chat. We are really looking for help with permit coordinating and getting things through the design process for Topanga Lagoon. So if you know of anybody, please send them our way. We'd be really grateful for that. One other quick thing is that we just also obtained a grant from the Wildlife Conservation Board for the lagoon, and it includes support for trying to connect with some interested tribal members, high school, college age, so that they could come and intern with the project and get some on the ground, feet wet experience. So if you have any contacts that way, please send them our way. Thanks.
Great. I also had a couple of, if there's any other questions, or I'll start off the discussion. All right. I had a question for Tanielle. Has anybody failed their restoration survey? Like recently? Like, oh man, this bridge sucks, or is there like something, or maybe a little thing they did that kind of made it so that the restoration didn't work out as it was planned? I think that's something that's good to learn from experience, right? Something that was good in practice and did not turn out well for the project.
Yeah, so I haven't seen it yet in any of the projects I've monitored in Southern California. I know our NorCal crew is on this call. They might have examples of that if they want to pitch in. But so far I've pretty much just been monitoring fish passage projects, and they've all kind of fulfilled their goal of providing, fish passage. There have been little features that have had issues. So I know some of the projects we've had examples of, like, they installed like a root wad or something to try and either send the channel one way or form a pool just as part of a larger fish passage project, and that root wad got washed out. So that treatment itself failed or wasn't successful, but the project overall was. So we've seen those sort of things. And that gets noted in our reporting. So some smaller treatments can then maybe be tweaked in future based on kind of our monitoring results.
Yeah, I guess that was kind of rude. I wasn't asking to name names, but I guess I was just asking like general examples,
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else have any or things they would like to announce, or general questions to anybody in this call, or anything, or calls to action? Okay, well, I'll just remind everybody, we have our field trip, June 21st. I will send it to everybody who attended this meeting, and then if you RSVP'd, you should also be on the list, but I'll send it out to the RSVP list. Let me get those links real quick. But yeah, they'll be from 10 to 2 p.m. We are just touring the Santa Ynez, that's the Santa Clara, the Santa Clara area. And hopefully Well, it should be a great time. Please sign up for carpool. Michelle, did you have something you wanted to put up last minute?
Yes, sorry about that. Our office is quite busy, so I've been in and out of helping answering phone calls, but I know that it's not necessarily related to the um like the restoration projects, but we all know that we're all interested in conservation. So I wanted to drop in the chat. And we know that our streams and our oceans are related. Observe an observance of World Ocean Day. Assemblymember Bennett introduced a resolution that essentially helps encourage the legislature as well as our state regulatory partners to prioritize updating and looking at and the potential expansion of marine protected areas and at varying degrees. So just wanted to let you know that we just introduced it last week, so it's very fresh off the books, and we're already starting to see hesitation and a lot of kind of pushback from recreational fishers, the usual kind of arguments that you might imagine, but any support that you can get for again, this is a resolution, so not really legally binding, but just helping the state to prioritize this relationship that we have with our oceans, as well as the health of our fishes as they return back up to the life cycles of the stream. So thank you very much. Sorry.
No, that's a perfect thing to announce. That is totally on topic because the one thing that I'm also a marine biologist and ichthyologist. The one thing is that you can't talk about the watershed without talking about the ocean. They are inextricably linked, and to ignore one is to ignore the other. It's the whole water cycle, right? And so whenever I look at planning projects, I always try to look at the whole cycle and not just the terrestrial area. Because our point is to get these guys out to the ocean and come back. If the ocean's not good enough for them to come back, then they're not coming back. And somebody requested if anybody wants to show hands of anybody, the people who are going to be attending this field trip, that'd be great if you want to raise your hand or a thumbs up or anything like that. Okay, we got one. I'm also going to raise my hand. Okay. All right, so on call we have about 4 people. The next one, okay, we have another one, a thumbs up. Thank you.
I'm 2. I can't get to
Okay.
the reactions fast enough.
That's okay. Really appreciate it. So we have a nice group of people coming up. Really look forward to see you guys. And again, if you have time for next week on Friday, please come attend. You could even try to meet us at the end of the trip for lunch in the Santa Clara River Preserve, Nature Preserve. I think that'd be really nice way to end it. Other than that, any more last minute announcements? This is a perfect time to talk about, you know, things like MPAs and other things like that. All right. Well, oh, go ahead.
I have a net and waders and I think a collection pan or something that I bought a long time ago for a student, and I would love to get them out of my garage and back into use. And they were pretty expensive when I first bought them. So if anybody wants to make a donation to our organization, or if they're useful in some other way, that's not a necessity, but it would be lovely.
Okay. Well, Lynn, if you want to put your email in chat for way people contact you.
Yeah, because I could bring them down to if anybody wants them and is going to this tour.
Yeah.
That's the reason they brought it up.
No, it's a perfect reason to. But again, I also put in chat for RSVP the short schedule, and then also the way to sign up for the carpool. And I will resend this all out again. But I want to say thank you to everyone who showed up. I hope you have a wonderful Thursday. If you have any more questions, you would like to be a speaker for next meeting, or have a topic that we talk about the next meeting, please email me. If you have any events you'd like us to attend or promote on our Instagram or whatever social media, please let me know, and we'd be happy to support all coalition members with their projects in any way, shape, or form. And if you have any more questions for the speakers, you can email me and I can always direct you to them. Again, thank you to our speakers, Rosi and Tanielle, for showing up. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Bye.